All right, so welcome back. Here is the castle. So what we need to do now is put some textures on this thing. And again, I'm still using those Maya shortcuts because I'm just clueless. I'm going to copy this wall here just so I can show you how to put textures on it. And I'm going to hide everything else. Remember, hide unselected, so that we can just focus on this wall for now. All right. Now, in order to put a stone wall kind of texture on this wall, we need to create what's called a material. All right. And to create a material, we need to use the material editor. Right now, it's blue because of this default color right here, and the color swatch is right here in the command panel. And you can change the color of it very easily, see? But that is just a default color. That doesn't really mean anything. It just helps you keep your objects organized, all right? Excuse me. To make it look realistic, we need to do some work, okay? We need to do some work. And one other thing, before I begin to texture something, I will delete any polygons that are not going to be seen. For example, these polygons on the bottom of this wall are going to be in the ground. We're not going to see them, so why have them in the system? So I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to delete them because we just don't need them. Plus, we don't want the computer wasting processing energy dealing with them when they're not going to be visible, because it has to deal with them whether or not the camera can see them. Does that make sense? It still has to calculate them. Same thing with this on the end. I could probably delete that because remember, on one end I'm putting the wall together with another piece, right? So unless I'm going to see that polygon, I really don't need it. So I'm going to delete the one, but I'm going to leave this one just so I can demonstrate something to you. All right? So now I've got this wall, and I'm going to put some textures on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the material editor. And the material editor is right here in your toolbar, right here. And the shortcut for that is M on your keyboard. And that brings it up. Here is the material editor right here. I think you can also find it in the up here somewhere, but I never use that. I just usually push M on the keyboard. Excuse me. So when we begin to construct a material, we need to start with a base material right here. All right? We need to start with a base, and here they are right here. Now, I am using the Arnold renderer right now. That is the default renderer that's on when you start up 3D Max. So these are the materials that are available to me to use with Arnold. If I was using another kind of a renderer, some of this wouldn't be visible. Let me show you. I'm going to open up Render and go into the Render Settings, Render Setup, and I'm going to change from Arnold to the Scanline Renderer. And when I do that, you saw that immediately resort and give me a different assortment of materials. You saw that, did you not? Remember me telling you last time that when the computer renders the image that you're creating in this 3D program, the renderer puts together how the geometry is supposed to act with the lights and the materials to create the image and make it look realistic. And the render algorithm is what makes that happen. So each render algorithm, each renderer works only with certain materials and certain lights. Remember that from last time. So we're going to stay in Arnold, and I'm going to start with a physical material right here. This is the basic material in Arnold. And I'm going to click and drag it out into the slate area, which is this area here. And notice it has a bunch of nodes here and a bunch of stuff going on. What we're going to do is connect textures to these nodes so that we can create a material to apply to our wall. We did this already once, remember? When I click the material settings come up over here in this area. Now, in order to apply a material to this wall, in order to make this wall look like bricks, I need a texture of stone or something. And remember, last time I showed you textures.com, which is a place you can find them. Textures.com. Excuse me. And when you open up textures.com, in order to get anything, you need a free account. I'm already logged in, I think. Yep. And I have 15 free credits. You get 15 free credits per day when you make a free account. You can buy more credits if you want, but you get 15 each day. And you can download all sorts of things in here. One of the things I need right now is a texture for my wall. These textures here are ones you can use, but I'm not going to go into this right now because this is a little confusing. All right? Let me show you what I mean. I won't spend too much time on it. But if I open up one of these 3D scans, you can see that there's all sorts of stuff in here. If I select wall, bricks, you can see I've got all sorts of really nice brick textures here that I could use on my wall, right? I could use maybe that one, or I don't know. Doesn't matter. Whatever I pick gives me the texture, and this is the wall. This is the material applied to a 3D object. And here are the textures that go along with this material. Here is the albedo or the diffuse texture. This is the height or bump map. This is the normal map. This is the roughness map. And this is the ambient occlusion map. All of these things go together, and I can take these and download them and connect them to these nodes in their proper space. And I'll get a very realistic material along with the lighting and the render engine when I apply it to my wall. Does everybody understand that? Let me know that you understand that somehow. All right. Well, so the problem is, though, that when you download these, you download them as TIFF files, T-I-F-F. All right? And a TIFF file is an uncompressed photographic image. All right? Now, guess what? 3D Max doesn't like TIFF files. So if you're going to use these, you have to bring them into Photoshop and convert them to JPEGs or PNGs so you can use them in 3D Max. Maya will use TIFF files, so you don't have to do that. So that's why I'm not going to do this with you guys, because I don't want the confusion of having to convert them. Okay? So skip these, even though they're great. Skip them, and we're just going to use a material. I'm looking for regular photos here, brick, and I want medieval bricks because this is a castle. So I'm going to click that. And then in here, I can have a visual reference. Do I want a mixed size brick? Do I want a stacked stone brick? Do I want a mossy brick, a dirty brick? What do I want? I think I want mixed stone. And I think I want something that looks like, well, first thing I need to do is make sure mine are seamless. So I'm going to check this link right here. And that sorts them so I only have seamless textures that I'm looking at. So I think I'm going to grab this one. Now once I have it, I can download it by clicking right here. Notice some of these are worth credits here, right? They're worth 30. How many credits is that worth? 2 credits? Well, shoot, I could get that. I have credits. I don't know why it's not letting me download it. But I could download that, and notice it's coming in. It's textures.com, blah, 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 mixed, blah, seamless, right? I could name that. I probably should rename that, but I'm not going to, just for expediency. Now, I'm going to put this on my desktop, but I'm going to caution you when I do that, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. All right, so now I have the texture that I'm going to use. So to apply it to my material, I'm going to drag off the base color node because that is what I have. I have a base color. And I'm going to let go, go to General, and click Bitmap. And it's going to ask me, okay, which bitmap do you want to use? Notice, please, that it went to Documents, 3D Max, 2021, Scene Assets, Images. This is where 3D Max wants to keep your texture files. It wants to keep them in its project folder structure because if I were to move this map later, which I'm going to, it will not work. So for now, I'm going to just apply it, and then I'm going to move it and show you what happens. There it is, and I'm going to click Open. So now I have this material in here. I have this texture in here, okay? Now I'm going to apply it to my wall. I can do that one of two ways. I can select my wall. I can select my wall, and then I can click this button right here, Assign Material to Selection. Or I can take this output node, move my view so I can see my wall, take this output node here, drag it and drop it on my wall. And you will see here is the texture applied to the wall. Now I want to point out to you that it doesn't look right on parts of the wall right here, as you can see, but we're going to fix that. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain it in just a minute. It doesn't look right on the top, and it doesn't look right on the end where I still have a polygon here. See? It's smeared. It doesn't look right. But it looks good on the top and the bottom, on the front and the back. Notice it's also shiny. See how it's reflecting the light here? You see that? That's because the settings in the material are not correct. So I need to fix that as well. So I'm going to go back into the material editor. I'll click this button here. And I'm going to click the settings for my material. And I'm going to change some stuff in here. I can choose a preset. And you're going to open that up and see what I got here. I got glossy paint, satin paint, matte paint, varnish paint. Got all sorts of stuff in here. Metal. I'm going to choose matte paint. And it disconnected my material, but my texture, so I'm just going to connect it back. Now that should not be shiny anymore. It's still shiny, see? It's still smooth. I have to go back here, and what I need to do is change some stuff in here. And specifically what I need to change is the roughness, all right? That should be 1. Okay? Does everybody understand why roughness should be 1? When something's 100% rough, it's not going to reflect any light, is it? And if it's not rough, it's 0% rough, it's going to reflect light. I also need to look at the glossiness setting here and make that, I think, I'm just going to leave roughness alone. Metalness should be 0. It's not metal. Scattering, transparency. I think all of these okay. So let's look at this material again and see. Now it's not reflecting any light. See? It's still kind of flat though, you see here? And I can fix that flatness by opening up the material editor and connecting this texture to the bump map node. And that will also help make it look not quite so flat, at least from a distance. We'll add some depth to it. If I want to add more depth to it, then I can go here and scroll down and find the bump setting, which is right here. It's at 0.3 right now, and I can change that to maybe 0.8. And that should add a little more depth to it. So that looks pretty good. Now let's address this. Why is this like this? Well, the reason these polygons don't look the same as these is because I extruded these out from the top of this base box here. And when I did that, I created new polygons. I created new faces. And by creating new faces, I created new faces without any UVW coordinates. Okay, UVW coordinates. UVW. I put that in the chat. UVW equals X, Y, Z. Okay, but for materials and how materials are projected onto the surface in relation to the view of the camera. Does that make sense to you? Now let me show you how to fix this. First, let's look at the direction that these are facing. All right. If I get my move gizmo here and look at this gizmo, you can see that these polygons here are facing in the X direction. This polygon on the end here is facing in the Y direction. And these polygons on the top are facing in the Z direction. These polygons here on the sides of these crenellations are facing in the Y direction on both sides. And then on the back, it's the same, okay? So here's what we need to do. We need to tell the computer that these polygons here on this side of the wall and this side of the wall should be facing, in terms of the map, in the U direction. And here's how we're going to do it. We are going to add a Uvw Map Modifier to this object. So we're going to go to the modifier list, and we're going to scroll down and find UVW. Oh, come on. UVW map right here. And we're going to click it. And notice that immediately screws up my texture. Totally screwed it up. That's because the default projection for this UVW map modifier is planar, which means it projects the map as a plane, and in this case, in the Z direction. Now let me show you something. If I open up this modifier and select the gizmo and scale this gizmo out, see the texture changing? Look on the top here. You see that looks normal now? Watch what happens when I rotate this planar projection map. You see? But look at the top now. The top's all messed up. Watch what happens when I rotate it this way. Oops. Now these are good, right? And they're good all along the sides here, but they're messed up on the front and the top. Does everybody see what I'm talking about here? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Okay, so I'm going to switch to a box map because, you know, this is a box, right? So I'm going to switch to a box map, and I'm going to look and see how that looks. It looks good on the front. It looks good on the back. It looks good on the sides, see? And it should look pretty good on the top. See? The reason that is because this box map has projection here in this direction, in the X direction, Y direction, and the Z direction. So this box map takes care of everything I need to do, as long as I scale it. Now, if I left it at its default, it would have been like this. It would have been tightly on that box like so, and look how it looks on the top. It doesn't look right. But if I scale it out, it looks good. See? Same thing on the ends. That looks just fine. So we can call that done. I'm going to deselect the gizmo and collapse that modifier, and we have now a wall that is textured. Now, in order for me to do anything else here and not see this box anymore, I need to get rid of this box because I don't want to see this in my scene. I need to add an edit poly modifier to the top of the stack, and that makes that box go away. Now let's say also that I don't want to see these edges anymore. I can click the display settings here and turn off edged faces, and now I don't see those edges anymore. Now, one of the things that's going to happen to your kids often is when they create a material, in the material editor, you have to have this button pressed right here, Show Shaded Material in Viewport, for each material that you want to show. If I uncheck that box, see, the material's not there. So you have to make sure that that is turned on, that button right there, Show Shaded Material in Viewport. See, now it's back. Everybody good so far? Any questions? Talk to me, people. This is your chance to ask questions. Questions, comments, observations?
No, I don't have questions at this time.
Okay. Tina? Anybody?
Yes, I have a question. I saw how you turn off the edged faces.
Yes.
And before that, you turned something else off.
Yes.
I forget what you turned off.
All right.
Do you remember?
So I turned off edged faces. That was right here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
but there's a
yeah, I know. I got rid of the box here. The UVW.
That's right. I don't remember this.
Okay, to get rid of the UVW box here that is there because of the UVW Map Modifier, I have to put an Edit Poly modifier on top of that, on the top of the stack, to get rid of that. Right there, Edit Poly. Boom. See?
Okay.
That allows me to go on and, move this around and select something else and keep working.
Right.
Now, normally, if I were building this castle, and I'm going to go ahead and unhide everything else, I would texture this wall before I built my entire castle, see, because why not do that? Because, now I would have to texture all of these. Well, why not just, copy the textured one, the one that's already textured and has UVW coordinates on it. And then I'll group this. And put it in place. Whoops. And so forth, and I would just continue building it like we were doing. All right, I'm not going to make you watch me do that. Now, to texture the tower, and I'm going to select both of these things and hide everything else, hide unselected. And I'm going to create a material for the tower roof and the tower itself. I'm going to put an Edit Poly modifier at the top of the stack here so I can start clean, right? I don't want that taper gizmo there. And I'm going to make a material. So I'm going to go to textures.com and I'm going to search for, well, actually, I'm not going to search because it gives me a bunch of stuff. I'm going to look for roofing. And under roofing, I can look for old ceramic or slate. I like that fish scale slate. I think I'm going to grab this one. It is seamless. Go ahead and download it. And then make a material. Bring up the material editor. I'm going to move over here, and you just middle mouse drag to move the slate around. Grab another material. Now remember, we have to change the roughness to 1, otherwise it'll be shiny. And then drag off the base color map, general bitmap, and find that roofing texture. I'm also going to connect this to the bump node right here, so I'll have some bump on it. And then I'm going to find the bump setting, which is right here, and make that 0.8. And then I'm going to drag this and drop it on top of my roof. And that's what that looks like. Now, this looks pretty decent, right? But I might be able to make it look better by adding a UVW map to it. So look at my modifier stack here. You see how it's starting to build up? I'm going to add a UVW map to this. Go to my modifier list, select UVW map, and it starts with that planar map. I'm going to try cylindrical and see if that looks any better. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And in the cylindrical, in the settings here, notice I have some tiling options here. I'm going to tile this in the Z direction and see what happens. And remember, UVW is XYZ. Well, that didn't do anything. Make that back to 1. Let's try this one. That looks pretty good, except it starts to squish them down there at the bottom. And then I'm going to try this one. Oh, look at that. See, that looks a lot better. And I could just click and keep dragging that until I get it to look like I want. Isn't that great? And now I can add another Edit Poly modifier to the top of the stack to get rid of that gizmo. So that's our roof. But look at this. This looks terrible. You see that? I don't like the way that looks. So what I might do about that is this. I'm going to go to polygon mode and select this polygon. And I'm going to right click and select Inset, which is right here. And when I do, I get a little change in my cursor here. I'm going to click and drag on that polygon and pull that in. But that doesn't really look any better. But it might look better because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to extrude this new polygon I made in. Let me go to change to edged faces so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to right click again and select extrude this time. And notice I have a new cursor gizmo here. I'm going to click and drag so that that goes inward. Notice it's coming out now because that's tapered, right? I'm just going to make it go in, make it extrude up to about the top of the tower itself. And then I'm going to scale this in to shrink it. So I'm going to right click a couple times to turn off that tool I was using. And I'm going to get my scale tool now and scale that polygon inward a little bit, like so. So I don't see it. So see, now that looks a little better, in my opinion. I can also push this down a little bit now. Oops. I'm going to switch back to object mode and pull the whole thing down. All right. So now I want to texture the tower itself. So to texture the tower itself, or build materials for it. And see, it gets confusing because, you know, we use texture and material interchangeably, but a material has textures on it. So when I'm not, it just makes more sense to say I'm texturing this object than I'm materialing this object or adding materials to it. But remember, I don't need this polygon here on the bottom, so I'm going to go to polygon mode and select that polygon and delete it. Boom. All right, so let's create this thing. I'm going to turn off polygon mode by clicking on that button. And I'm going to apply, actually, you know what? I'm going to go back to polygon mode because I'm going to select the polygons of the tower. And all the polygons, actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select all the polygons like that. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and deselect the polygons for the windows because they're going to get a different texture than the other polygons. And I'm going to deselect the polygons for the door. So now I've got all these polygons selected that are going to receive a stone texture. Now I can put that same stone texture that I just used on the walls on this if I want to. But I think I'm going to get another one. So I'm going to go back to textures.com. Oops, that's not textures.com. And I'm going to close this and go back to bricks and go back to medieval. And I think for this one, I'm going to get overgrown, seamless. I'm going to find one with some like moss on it, something like this maybe. I'm going to download this, put it on my desktop, and go back to 3D Max. And I'm going to I'm going to create a material now. So I got to go to the material editor, find a blank space, drag out that physical material, select it to make sure I have the settings selected, make the roughness 1, otherwise it'll be shiny. Drag off the base color node, general bitmap, desktop, and find that texture that I just downloaded, which I think is this one. If I'm not sure, I can double click the preview swatch to make sure, and that makes it bigger. And I'm also going to connect it to the bump node. Select my material, scroll down and find the bump setting, which is right here, and change that to 0.8. And now, move this out of the way a little bit, move my view, and drag the output node and drop it on those polygons. And you will quickly see that we have this applied. But notice how the shaded selection of my polygons here don't allow me to really see the texture. I can fix that by pushing F2 on my keyboard, and that turns off that shading. So that's a useful piece of information. F2 on your keyboard turns that selection shading on and off. F2, all right? Now what do we need? We need a UVW map. So we're going to go to modifier stack, or the modifier list, sorry, find UVW map, and this should be cylindrical, I think. And there we have it. And then we need to work on the tiling. So I'm going to get about right here, and I'm going to work on the tiling in this direction and in this direction. Until I get it to look like I want. And that looks pretty darn good, I have to say. And I'm going to put an edit poly modifier to the top of the stack, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I now need to select different polygons to receive a different texture. And those polygons are these windows. Remember, I have that selection shading turned off, so I'm going to push F2 on my keyboard to turn it back on so I can see easily which polygons I'm selecting. Now, I want to explain something to you about these windows. If I apply a window texture to these windows, these are all facing in different directions. I can't really apply them all at the same time because each one is going to have to get its own UVW map. So I'm just going to start with one. All right, and I'm going to go find a window texture on textures.com. And guess what? They have them all over the place. They have windows right here. All kinds of windows. Cathedral windows, ornate windows, old windows. I'm going to look at these. I kind of need a square one. I don't need one with a arch. I like this one, so I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to download this. It's interesting. Stick it on my desktop and make a material out of it. Move over, drag a new material out in the slate, make the roughness 1. Drag off the base color node, general bitmap, desktop, window. And I'm also going to connect it to the bump and change the bump setting to 0.8. Now, this, when I apply this, whoa. That is not what I want to happen. Hang on a second, let's see if this works. No. All right, so The reason that is happening is because this is all part of the same object. So in order to make this work, I need to detach these polygons from this tower object, which is an easy thing to do. So all I need to do is select the polygons, scroll down, and find detach in the command panel. And it's somewhere in here. Right here, detach. And when I detach them, notice now I have a new object here. Or do I? Yes. It's called Object 1. I'm going to double click it here. Why can't I double click it? There you go. And name it Window. So now I have this object that I can move, but notice where my pivot point is for this object. See? I need to center that pivot on that object because it's a pain in the butt to have the pivot point way down here. That's because it used to be, this object used to be part of this object. And that's where the pivot point was for this object. So to fix this, I'm going to go to the command panel, go to the Hierarchy tab, which is the third one over, and I'm going to select center pivot. Why can't I do that? Oh, I have to push Effect Pivot Only and click Center to Object and then turn that off. See, now it's centered on the window right here. Okay, so guess what? I need to do that to all three of these windows because I'm going to have the same problem with all three of them. So that's easy. Back to the Modify tab, select the tower, go to Polygon mode, which is here. Select the polygons for each window and detach them. And rename them. And center that pivot. Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, Center to Object. Turn that off. Select the next one. Now the reason I'm detaching them separately is because they all need to be separate objects. Because of the way they're going to be textured. And center that pivot. Effect Pivot Only, Center to Object, turn it off. And do the last one, which is this one. Detach, rename. Center the pivot. Hierarchy tab, Effect Pivot Only. Turn that off. So now we have separate window objects. So now I can create my material, or I already created my material. So now I'm going to add that to the window, right, like so. And that looks pretty terrible. One of the reasons it looks terrible is because if you look at this texture, it's got all this extra brick stuff going on here. Well, guess what? I can crop that out right inside 3D Max. All I got to do is select the texture. Right here, I have it selected. And I brought up its settings here. Down here in the settings under Bitmap Parameters, I click View Image. And that brings up the image. And this little red line here, right here, if you click and drag on the handles for it, allows you to crop the image directly from within 3D Max. So you just crop out the pieces you don't need. Like so. And then you close it and you click apply. And that immediately cut off the bricks. You can see that happened right there. Also, when we close the material editor, you can now see that I don't have any brick anymore, but the window still looks weird. So what I need to do is put the Uvw Map Modifier on this polygon. On this window. So I'm going to select that modifier list, get my Uvw map, and this is a planar map, but it's in the wrong direction. See, it's in the Z direction. I need to change that, and I can change that here. It needs to be in the Y direction, but I also need to scale the gizmo. You can see that it's scaled wrong. So I can just use my scale tool to do that. I can open up the modifier, select the gizmo, select my scale tool, and just scale that out until it looks correct. I can also move it if I need to, like so. And there you go. Now, I have to do that to each one of these. So I'm going to select each one, and I'm going to go ahead and apply the material. And I'm going to show you something that's an easy shortcut. I can either drag that output node, or I can just click this little button here, assign material to selection, which I'm going to do. They're all there. Now I'm going to select the one that I've already mapped, and I'm going to right click and copy that Uvw Map Modifier and paste it on one of these other ones. And that works, but not really, because again, we're not in the right direction. I need to check the gizmo and see what's going on. Look, the gizmo is over here. That's not right. Okay, so that just did not work. So forget that I did that. We just have to do this for each one of these. And this one's in the X direction. You can see that. By the way, once I change the X direction like this, I can also click this button here, Fit, that fits the map to the polygon. But it still doesn't look right. So I'm going to try scaling this. Oh, you know what? It's rotated. That's the problem. It needs to be rotated this way and then scaled to fit. And moved into place. Deselect that, select this one. Same thing. Modifier. This one needs to be in the X direction, so I'm going to select X. It's rotated, you can see, 90 degrees. You see this little line here? That tells you which direction is up for the UVW map. So I'm going to open the modifier, select the gizmo, and rotate it 90 degrees so that that's facing up. And now let me try that fit. There you go. And that just worked just perfectly. But I still need to move it a little bit, it looks like. Oops. Need to move the gizmo a little bit. Last one. Then we're going to do the door, and then we're going to call this finished. This one needs to go in the Y direction. And you see, I know that because I'm looking at the move gizmo here. It's also rotated. You can see the... no, it's not. I don't see that little line. There you go. That's perfect. Open up the modifier, grab the gizmo, move it around a little bit, center it a little better. And there we go. Close the gizmo. Now we just need to do the door right here and we'll be finished. So I'm going to select the tower again. I'm going to go into polygon mode. Right here, I'm already in polygon mode. Select these polygons and detach them. I'm going to name this new object door. And find a door texture for it. Go back to textures.com. Look for doors. Medieval door. I think I like that one. No, I don't. It's got a sticker on it or something. I'm just going to grab this one. Put it on my desktop. Make a material for it. Select the material. Roughness 1. Drag off the base color node. Find the material. It's a door. Connect it to the bump. And change the bump setting to 0.8. And then apply this to the door. And close the material editor. Now that looks terrible because, again, it needs a UVW map. So I'm going to grab that, put a map on it. It needs to be projected in the Y direction, so I'm going to change to Y. And here is the little up-facing handle on the gizmo. So I'm going to open up the modifier, select the gizmo, get my scale tool, and scale that up so that it fits. Actually, I could just click fit, couldn't I? Instead of doing that, I'll just click fit. Boom. But now I might need to move this over a little bit, but I don't know. I like it. I think it looks just fine, so I'm going to leave that alone. So now we have a tower. I'm going to unhide everything else. We could go with our castle. Has a door and everything. So that, my friends, is how you texture and UVW map something. Apply mapping coordinates. Now, one thing you need to understand, the reason I put those textures on my desktop is this. I'm going to move one, and then I'm going to show you what happens when you move it. Just a second. I'm going to grab the roof texture. Okay, so I just moved that to another location. Look what happened in 3D Max. It's gone. 3D Max doesn't know where to find this texture anymore. If I open up the material editor and look for that material that we made, you can see it's black here. It doesn't know where that is. I moved that into the Scene Assets Images folder. That's where I put it. So I can fix this a couple of ways. I can click this this file path here like so and find the texture. I know where it is. I put it in the 3D Max project folder here in the Scene Assets Images folder. And there it is. Now it's there and it's there. Or if I had a whole bunch of textures that I moved, like I'm going to move all of these now, so you can see what that looks like and how to fix it. You may not want to have to do that to every single one of your objects in your scene. You can do it all at once. Like so. See, now they're all gone. So here's how you fix that. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Oh. You click, you go to File to fix all of these all at once, because I moved them all to the same folder, right? You click File, Project, Configure Project Paths. And that brings up this window here. I need to make a new external file path here. So I click this tab, and I need to add a new path. 3D Max already operates with these paths. So I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to go find that project folder that I just put those things in. Scene Assets, Images, and here's, I moved all the textures in there, and I'm going to click Use Path. And then I'm going to click OK. And that did not work. Why did that not work? It used to work. Now, in the material editor, all of these materials look like they're good. See? It may be that I just have to reapply them to my objects here. Not sure, but let's see. So this one was the walls, so let's reapply that to the walls. Still didn't work. Oh, you know what? That wasn't turned on. That button I told you all about. See? All of them are on. Let's see if this one, that's that. This is the tower. Oh, you know what? When I reestablished the file paths, it didn't turn these on. This show shaded material for each one of these. So now I got to do the windows, which is this one. Turn that on, turn it off, and the windows are back. See? And the same thing for the door. And that should be fine now too. It is. Okay, so that is texturing and mapping on the castle project. And some of this, or actually a lot of this, is in those tutorials that are on our website that I showed you already, HPC Game Dev, right here. It's in this project, in the castle project right here. Okay? Any questions? I know that was a lot. Any questions?
No questions at this point.
Okay, so let's take a little break. And when we come back, we only have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure I show you some stuff in After Effects, and I need to show you a couple more things in 3D Max.
Mr. Flint?
Yes.
Will you render this part of the video out before time runs out? Because I don't know how much time Camtasia will allow you to.
Yeah, me either. So the last video was an hour. It seemed to be okay with that. This one is an hour now, so I'm going to render the first one out, but that may take a little time. So, and I can't do anything while it's rendering. So let me do that, and when we take a break, and I'll come back when it's done. I hope it doesn't take longer than about 10 minutes. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right. I'm turning off recording now.